There we go.
Okay,
Okay, so
cool.
welcome to this dialogue with the author, with Philip Mary, on his book, The 9 Keys of Synchronicity. We're here for an hour, and we're very happy to have everyone here on behalf of the Taos Institute. So Philip, you can take it away.
Wonderful. Very, very happy to be here. And obviously, we like to have more people, but I quite like it that we've got a small group because I will share my stuff. I'll share how I got interested in synchronicity, but I like this to be as much a chat because it looks like we've got some very experienced, wise people in the room with lots of things to say. So what I'll do, folks, I'll share a little bit about me and why I got interested in synchronicity. I'll share a little bit about my PhD journey, which Greg knows a little bit about already because we shared some of that, Greg, already, and how that led to the book. But what I'm particularly interested in before I do that, is there anything, given that I'm just going to say, this is my PhD, this is my book, this is what I do with synchronicity, and explain the 9 keys, take that for granted, and I'll do that in a short period of time. Is there anything specific that people want to focus on so I can weave that into my presentation? Just shout out if there's any particular part of synchronicity you're interested.
Yes, Philip. So I'm curious, and I think I read you did synchronicity and also something around leadership.
Yeah, my PhD was called Synchronicity and Leadership.
Yes. Yeah. So I would be curious to guess, perhaps weaving kind of this leadership dimension, because I am currently doing my dissertation around leadership, broadly speaking. So I'd be just,
Okay.
if there's time for that.
No problem, Elena. I'll build that in. Anybody else? A specific focus you're interested in? I look like I've got no response, so I'll type. Oh, Jean?
Yes. Thank you for pronunciation. Yes, synchronicity and coaching.
And coaching. Okay, cool.
It happens very often in coaching. So
I will definitely focus on that. I've done sessions with ICF on synchronicity and coaching.
Thank you.
Anything else before I dive straight in? Bruce, you look like you have something to say. You've got this eager-looking face.
Oh, just working on changing myself and being more eager. But
Okay.
I'm interested in the subject. I'm interested. I guess I would ask, where does synchronicity come from? What underlies?
I have no idea, Bruce, but I've got some answers on that.
Okay, good. Well, we can talk. I don't have an answer, but talk.
I will share what I have. The thing about synchronicity, is that it's a mystery. At one level, it's a mystery. I do believe that quantum mechanics helps us with some answers to unlock that mystery, but I'm kind of resistant to any presentation which says it's black and white in terms of this is what definitely it is. It's an ongoing topic that's been around, I think, probably since human beings came upon the planet. But what I did, so let me dive in, and then I'll share my slides as well. So basically, I just got interested in synchronicity because it happened to me a lot. I'm from the UK. I'm 75 years old this year. And all through my life, I've had synchronicities follow me around. So I kind of got interested in it and said, I'd like to find out more what this is all about. And once I did that and talked to leaders, especially Elena, who used to say to me, it happens to me all the time. Please don't tell my boss and please don't tell my colleagues. And so what I like about synchronicity, to me, it's an emerging understanding of how we live and how we work in leadership and teams in our lives. And so I dived into the PhD and luckily found Taos was interested. And I was so privileged to have David Cooperrider as my supervisor. And I'll mention a little bit about that. And then from the PhD, I said, now let me make this into a book. So let me just share with you 1 or 2 slides, and I'll pause at various points in the slides to see if there's any questions. Okay. So here we are, folks. That's what we're in. If you didn't sign up for this talk, then you're in the wrong talk. A little bit about me. I'm 8 years, right, starting at the bottom there. I'm originally a marriage and family therapist in London, working with hooligan children and their families and their parents. Did that for 8 years. Then for 12 years, went into organizations around the world. First, I worked for the government of Sri Lanka, heading up their leadership development unit. I worked for London government, north of London. I worked for a business school in the UK. And then for 4 years, I was head of leadership development for Reuters for Asia. And then in 1991, set up my own business, which I've been running for 33 years. I say so here, 33 years, where my passion and my interest is teams and leadership, in the sense of when there are teams with different cultures, how do they ensure that they understand each other and are successful? So what I'm going to do is to share with you some stories which got me interested in synchronicity. So I've worked in 63 countries running leadership development programs. And there I was in November the 17th, doing my monthly books in Singapore. And I needed to balance the budget, and I needed $15,000 to balance the books. That was 10 minutes before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 4 o'clock, the phone rang. And it was a partner of mine, Dr. Fons Trumpenaars, who I was working with doing cross-cultural work. He said, Philip, are you free next week? We need someone to do a session in Beijing. I looked at my diary. Yep, I'm free. He said, also, you'll be very pleased. It's 2 days work, but it's $15,000. So there I was, 10 minutes before 4. I need $15,000. 10 minutes later, $15,000 was given to me. Interesting, huh? That's the beginning of understanding something about synchronicity. You need something, and suddenly it appears in front of you without you doing anything. It doesn't appear in 10 minutes always, but this is the type of thing that got me interested. $15,000, I was very happy. A personal story. I was in my apartment in Singapore, this one I'm in now, and I wanted to move into a cheaper apartment and rent out my apartment so I could make some money. And I was pulling my hair out. What shall I do? Shall I do it? Shall I not do it? Shall I move? Shall I not move? I pulled up at a traffic lights in Singapore. By the way, this picture here is not Singapore, but it was North Bridge Road. I pulled up the traffic lights, literally saying to myself, shall I move? Shall I not move? Shall I move? Shall I not move? This lorry on the left-hand side came next to me. Guess what was written on the lorry? On my mind, shall I move? Shall I not move? Shall I move? Shall I not move? The lorry said, make the move. I said, thank you, God. Thank you, universe. Whatever the heck it is, I decided to move and I made that happen. Final story, I got many stories, but I'm just giving you 3, is I was deciding and contemplating about getting married. So this is a personal story. And I went to a seminar, 5-day seminar, personal development, where the songs of John Denver played loud and clear, especially some of the romantic ones. And I decided based on that to get married. You know, some of the songs kind of drew tears from me, decided to get married. And on the Friday evening, I said, I'd like to say thank you to John Denver. Friday evening. How the heck can I do that? Who knows? Saturday morning, I woke up Singapore newspaper, the Straits Times, there was an article, John Denver in Singapore next week. A friend of mine who was at the seminar with me, I shared the story with her, and then in the afternoon I got a phone call. And the phone call was from somebody working at the Shangri-La Hotel in Singapore, and she said, "You don't know me, but I hear you want to get hold of John Denver. He's staying at my hotel next week. If you send me a fax," remember faxes? "If you send me a fax, I'll see what I can do." She told me literally, she had the fax in her hand. And she said, "Now, how do I get hold of John Denver?" I sent her the fax. "How do I get hold of John Denver?" The lift opened. There was John Denver. "Mr. Denver, I have a message for you from one of your fans." Sunday, John Denver called me at home. John Denver called me at home and said, "Philip, I'm glad my songs work for you." And we had he left me a message, and I had the tape of the message. Again, how the heck does that happen? Friday evening, I'd like to say thank you to John Denver. 48 hours later, he called me. And if you want to know the outcome was, yes, I did get married to the love of my life. We're still happily married. She's Singaporean. So basically, folks, that got me interested. In my leadership development consulting, I like to keep in touch with things that are happening to me and how I integrate that into my work. And when I started talking to people, they told me synchronicity happened to them all of the time. They just didn't talk about it to their bosses because they thought it might affect what the boss thought about their leadership. But I was interested. So what did I do? I said, I want to first of all decide what synchronicity is. And this is basically my definition. Synchronicity is when out of the blue events turn up in our lives, provide answers to issues we are facing. There are many more complicated definitions. You'll find that's my simple definition. And I said, I want to go further with this, and I want to do a PhD. So long story short, decided to do a grounded theory PhD, synchronicity and leadership, where I asked 23 global executives what facilitates synchronicity. And from that, those interviews, I had 200 pages of data, and I basically came up with, from those 200 pages of data, what are the 9 keys of synchronicity. Here's the type of questions I asked, as well as what facilitates synchronicity. And so grounded theory methodology, as you all know, it's building up your own model based on what it is that people say. Did a lot of research. This is just 1/4 of the variety of books that I read in terms of what synchronicity was all about. Delved into these different domains, because obviously I've got the answers from the people I talk to, but further to your question, Bruce, I think it was your question, Bruce, I wanted to see, is there anything that causes this? What have people written about this? And especially how it relates to leadership. And what I came up with most, Bruce, was quantum physics, in terms of, I think, quantum entanglement, and I'll talk about that later, is a potential way of explaining how synchronicity happens. Quantum entanglement saying that we are 99% energy or empty space, and quantum entanglement says that people and matter is connected around the world. Lucky enough to have David Cooperrider, as I said, as my PhD supervisor, and got my PhD in 2017 at the grand old age of 69. So I'm going to pause there, because that's the first opening of how I got into it, before I then share with you the 9 keys. Are there any questions based on what I've said so far? And if not, I'll move on. Marie, was that a question?
I do have a question, yes. Thank you for sharing your story, so inspiring. And my question is regarding when you say synchronicity is in plain sight, do you think maybe your eyes were open to see those synchronicities? Because the stories you told us are so evident I mean, you say you want to meet that wonderful musician, and the next day it happens, or the links start happening. Do you think there's a participation from you, or there's an attitude in which you can?
Well, it's something I'll get into when I look at the first three of
Okay.
the 9 keys, Maria. No, but let me answer anyway. Carl Jung said, synchronicity is evident for those of us who have eyes to see. I think synchronicity, meaning the ability to attract to us what it is we're thinking about, has been around since the start of the universe. I think that Isaac Newton, and the logical world has put blinkers on us in the sense that the world is material, the world is logical, the world is sequential. And I think that's a particular blinkers over our eyes. And I think quantum physics and synchronicity are there when you have eyes to see them. I meet a lot of leaders in organizations who say, keep religion out of the organization. Sex, politics, and religion. But they don't want to talk about religion. And so I find there's a resistance for people who don't want to have anything that they perceive to be a little bit spiritual, a little bit woo-woo, have anything to do. But my belief is that I think that it's there for all of us to access if we're focused on it. Well, what I say to people in organizations when they tell me we don't have anything spiritual, you know, we're here to make money, we're here to be a successful organization, I said, fine, but can you tell me something? Answer a question. Do you use the word team spirit in your organization? They say, yeah, of course, we use it all the time. Tell me what you mean by team. No problem. I'll then say, so please tell me what you mean by spirit. So I think that a lot of people are closed in terms of not having eyes open to see that it's there. Does that answer, Maria, a little bit? Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Philip, yes.
Yes, Philip.
Elena,
so
yes.
I think my question actually leads nicely to what you were mentioning about closeness and resistance. And I guess I'm wondering, I love it, like I love the topic, but I wonder whether both during the PhD, during the dissertation phase, as well as afterwards within the organizations, you mentioned resistance. Like, how do you deal with that? You mean like proving it's scientific, and you know, how do you deal with this rejection, objections, resistance, closeness?
I don't worry about it, Elena. If people resist and don't want to know, I don't feel I'm in the job of persuading them. But what I will say to people, has anything ever happened to you and been given to you without you doing anything? So, for example, have you thought of a friend that you haven't seen for a long time, and 2 days later, they call you, they send you an email? So I think, and this is a really important question, Elena, because there is an ease with which people accept synchronicity in their personal lives. My proposition is that if it happens to us in our personal lives, when we go to work, do we switch off that part of ourselves? No, we don't. We hide it. Very often we hide it. So I'm actually working on my second book now, which is called Team Synchronicity, meaning helping teams to think about, they acknowledge that strange things happen to them, and very often they happen in the area of recruitment. They'll be saying, we need somebody for our team, but the candidates we have, most of them don't fit. I don't feel good about them. But then they'll say, I was at the bus stop the other day or on a plane the other day, and I just bumped into somebody who was the perfect match. So my proposition is that synchronicity is happening all of the time, what I'm about in this next phase of my life, however long God gives me, as I say, I'm 75 this year. In this next phase of my life, I'm all about saying, let's look at how we can actually recognize intuitive synchronicities in the workplace and find a way of explaining them. Does that make sense, Alina?
Yes, thank you so much, Philip.
Okay, shall I go on to the next slide? We're 24 minutes past the hour. Bruce, did you have a question? You were nodding your head there. No, okay. So let me now just dive in again. So, got my PhD, and as I say, I was so lucky to have David Cooperrider. If you want to understand my book, please read David's foreword to my book. I was so happy because, you know, when you do your PhD, you're wondering, is it going to be any good? Will it have recognition? And when David sent me his foreword, it's about 2 or 3 pages, it made me feel that my research had some validity. So if you want to understand more, please read David's foreword to it. And David's nicely said these types of things. I'm not going to show this from my ego perspective, but David found these points of view as he actually looked at my book, and obviously he was my supervisor for my PhD. So 9 keys and 3 different categories. So what I did with the 200 pages of data, I did analysis of them, grounded theory analysis, and broke them down to me to what seemed to be 3 different categories. 1 is discovering synchronicity, 2 is then integrating it into your life, and then 3 is around mindset. So let me kind of go through those. The red at the top, and I began sequentially with these. And remember, these are answers to my question, what do you think facilitates synchronicity? And key number 1, be curious about out of the blue events. So the people I interviewed said, watch out for stuff that turns up in your life without any explanation. Can be something crazy, can be somebody giving you $15,000, whatever it might be. But say, that's interesting. Why did that happen to me? I want to explore that further. Because when something comes your way, which you're curious about, key number 2 is then saying, connect the dots of your life. Meaning your interest has been aroused with key number 1. Why has it been aroused? Look for the bigger picture of your life. Could be your work life, your personal life, your married life, whatever it might be, and see where the connection might be. And then key number 3 is then act on intuition. And you notice I've said here, not be aware of intuition, but act on intuition. A lot of people I interviewed, not just in my PhD, but since then, have said there are many times in their lives when something has come their way and they knew they wanted to do something, but they didn't do it. So act on intuition is important. In my marriage counseling work, I've occasionally come across people who said, I knew on my wedding day, this was not the marriage for me, but I went ahead anyway. So when I talk to people and things have broken down, I still do some marriage counseling. They'll often say to me, you know, on the wedding day, I knew it wasn't right. So first set of keys. First set of keys here are the discovery keys. When that thing comes your way and you know it's a synchronicity and you act and do something. So for me, I got married. Why did I get married? Because it seemed the right thing to do, and John Denver only kind of confirmed that was the case. But what often happens is that people then say, that was interesting, and leave it there. What I'm interested in is the blue keys, meaning once the synchronicity has happened, how do you begin to integrate it into your life? First, I think, celebrate. So many people I talked to talked about you know, the hair going up on the back of their neck or on the hair on their hands, and they don't do anything about it. But key number 4, when I interviewed my PhD people, they said, celebrate. Because when you celebrate and you say, wow, let me look out for something more like this. How the hell did $15,000 land on my lap after 10 minutes? There's something going on here. So celebrate and look further. Key number 5, a lot of people said to me that synchronicity seemed to happen a lot to them when they were in service of other people. So I took, and they said that, but I've taken servant leadership and called it servant citizenship. So when you are particularly involved in issues that are about helping other people, that's a way also that synchronicity comes. Key number 6, set intention with heart-brain coherence. Now, I don't know if you know the Heart Math organization or the work of Joe Dispenza. I'm a consultant with Heart Math. I'm a consultant with Joe Dispenza. And both of them talk about setting intention with the brain and with words, and then allowing the heart to feel what it's like to have something happen. So key number 6 is not about just those synchronicities that come your way without you doing anything. Key number 6 is about setting intention. So Bruce, you asked about where does it come from? If we set intention and then know with our brain what the words are of what we want to happen to us and feel with our heart, then when our heart and brain are in coherence, it's more likely that synchronicities are going to come our way. And then finally, so here's, sorry, I'd forgotten I put this here. Heart Brain, if you don't know Heart Math organization, please go look at their white papers. It's the most fantastic organization. But they've studied the heart and how the heart influences the brain. A lot of us used to know many years ago, the brain was the center of activity and making things happen. Heart Math has said no. The heart sends more message to the brain than the other way around. And they found that the heart accesses deep intuition and is precognitive and can sense the future 6 seconds before it happens. Go and look at their research, they'll tell you more. And the heart knows whether something's about to arrive 4 seconds before the brain. So have a look at that. And I've made this kind of just more simple, which says you have the power to attract that which you desire through clear intent and strong emotion. And it's one of the things that we spend time with. The last 3 keys in green here are mindsets. Live, hope, and possibility. Now, somebody asked me about coaching. I have people now who call me up and say, I hear you're the synchronicity guy. I need some coaching about how to attract synchronicity into my life. So I was coaching somebody recently, worked for a major global organization. And he said to me, I'm trying to get a job in my specialism at a senior level, but I haven't got it yet. And I keep getting turned down for these jobs. I said, when did that happen recently? And he said, I just got turned down for a job the other day. And then he said, well, what do you know? I mean, I'm just not lucky. Good things never happen to me. I've never been lucky and I never will be. So I stopped him in mid-sentence, as a good coach should be, and said, when did you first say that to yourself? You'll never amount to anything. You'll never be lucky. When did you hear that first in your life? He said, when I was 9 years old, my mother said it to me. He remembered straight away. And I said, tell me the context. He said, well, Mom was comparing me and my homework and my brother. And Mom said, your brother's much smarter than you. You are really not so good at your homework. You'll never be successful. Now, Mom loved him dearly, I'm sure. But that phrase stayed in his life, and here he was in a coaching session with me at 35. So what I do with my coaching, I've forgotten to ask the question, I help people think about first all of the 9 keys, and then I'll ask them which are they good at and which are they not so good at. So despite this guy following key number 6 and doing brain and heart coherence, wanting the best job for him in his particular field, his mindset was, I'll never be lucky, I'll never be successful. So he had no hope and he had no possibility. So coaching wise, for the next period of time, I helped him think about how does he begin to change that mindset. And long story short, the very last 2 sessions I had with him, he got the job that he wanted. Key number 8, merge with the present moment. I've got this feeling and sense that when you're in the present moment is when you're feeling the quantum entanglement and quantum connection. If you're worried about the past, if you're worried about the future, sometimes synchronicity doesn't come your way. So merge with the present moment. Wherever you are, look around you in the present moment. I'll often ask people in my sessions to actually have the question that they want answered and then go for a 1-hour meditative walk and just notice in the present moment what comes their way. And then finally, key number 9, connect with source. A lot of my people that I interviewed were of a particular faith, Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, and believed that this was God guiding them. But obviously when I'm writing a book such as this, I don't want to say it's just about having a religion. So I called key number 9, connecting with source, meaning something that's out of our everyday reality, something bigger than us, and how to connect with that. So there are the 9 keys, and I'll say more. We've got half an hour left still. Questions on the 9 keys? Greg.
I'd like to ask you something which actually picks up your very interesting example about the guy who decided that he was fated not to get the senior job. And I've experienced that myself,
Okay.
coaching people. I reckon I've experienced some synchronicity in my life, both in my love life and in my work life.
Okay.
But I'm also aware of the fact that I've experienced many thoughts and have many intentions where a bit of synchronicity wouldn't half help, but it doesn't come along.
I know. Yeah. Me too, Greg, me too.
So there's sort of 2 bits to my question, really. One is whether you looked at this in probability terms.
Okay.
Okay, that probability suggests that perhaps as long as we don't, probability suggests that perhaps some things, yes, synchronicity might play a very powerful role, especially if we, as you say, foster the right conditions and mindsets that are likely to lead to positive outcomes. But in many cases, we could just say, well, probability suggests that things just won't work out. And I wondered whether you looked at that side of things at all when you were researching this, when things don't happen and they don't work out.
Well, people said to me, Greg, that when things didn't work out, they were upset at the time, but that later on, they were okay with it. One guy particularly, Greg, I mean, you were in Singapore, Greg, so you and I have a connection before this session. One of the people I interviewed, one of those 23 people, said that when he was in Singapore working for a big oil company, leader in an oil company, the position of country manager for Singapore came up and he wanted it and set all of his intention very clear. This is where I want to be. the company said, sorry, we've got other thoughts for you. We want you to go to South America. Now, he went to South America and then to North America and then South Africa. And 15 years later, the company said, we'd now like you to be country manager for Southeast Asia. And he explained to me how he saw it, Greg. He said, had I got the job when I thought I wanted it and was very disappointed when I didn't get it, I wouldn't have been ready. And I would probably have failed. So he said to me, that to him was synchronicity saying no for the time being, and he was better for it later on. Another example of synchronicity not working, I worked for a business school in the UK, Roffey Park Business School, and I wanted to go to Asia. I've got Indian great-grandparents, so I think I've got a yearning to be in Asia. And I applied for a job in Hong Kong with the Hong Kong Bank, and I wanted it. And they came back to me and said, Philip, no, we didn't give you the job. You're too senior. You're an assistant director in a business school. You won't be suitable for the type of job that we have in Hong Kong. I said, I don't care. I want to come to Hong Kong. I'll be there. I'll do anything. They said, sorry, no. And I was so pissed off, Greg. But I went on holiday. 2 weeks later, I came back. There was a telegram from Reuters saying, Philip, you don't know us, but we'd like to interview you for a job in Hong Kong. Long story short, I got the job in Hong Kong, and it was so much better than the Hong Kong bank job. The Hong Kong bank job would have been conducting leadership seminars somebody else had designed. The Reuters job was setting up the whole of the leadership training function. So, Greg, I can't give definitive answers on this. All I know is that sometimes synchronicities turn up and sometimes they don't. And probability theory for them happening or not happening is probably helping us understand that a little bit more. Does that make sense, Greg?
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to reading the book.
Okay. And your second question, and then we've got a question from Bruce. You said you had a second question.
And I'm sure that there are some other questions. Thanks very much.
There's the book, by the way, Greg. When next you're in Singapore, I'll give you a copy. Bruce, you had a question.
Yes, thanks very much. Thanks very much for that presentation. It was great. I really love the 9 points that you've gone on. I think you've really explained it very, very, very well. Really excited about it. I know people who would like to see the video, and I'll try to find a way to link to them. I know they're going to have to join the Taos group to see it, but maybe they will. So I don't really want to talk about the new thought movement, but there's link, if you don't know the new thought movement, which is something was very active in the United States and maybe worldwide, but certainly in the United States in the 1950s and into the 60s. It was yeah, essentially, I mean, my very short summary is you create your reality by how you think about it. But so I just saw that. I think there are some problems with how the new thought movement presented itself. I think that you have solved most of them by your 9 points. I think it's much more clear what you've said than what they've said. They didn't really involve the heart in it at all. Everything that I've read from the people who were leaders in that new thought movement. I'm struggling here for exactly what I want to say. So I really liked what you said about at the very beginning about, I can't think of the word.
Okay, that's okay.
Getting too old, you know.
Take your time.
Well, essentially, I'm trying to say about the movement of things from the future. So you did talk about the heart knowing things in 4 seconds in advance of the brain, and also of quantum physics. And there's a lot of ideas from quantum physics that have come into common culture. But so what it seems to me is going on, and you can comment on it, I don't know if it's really a question, is that things approach us from the future. And you see that a little bit in the heart math stuff.
Yeah.
Synchronicity, we call it synchronicity when we are aware of what's approaching us from the future. And but there are still things that approach us that we say we don't want. They're still coming to us. And we say that's not synchronicity because we wouldn't have chosen them. But as you've just explained, there is something that can be very meaningful for us for those things that we say, I wouldn't have chosen them. So I'll turn to you.
No, you're touching on something which is difficult, Bruce, and that's why you're struggling, because it is difficult. I can't definitively, and I don't think anybody can, saying this is exactly where synchronicity comes from. All that we can do is note down the stories that happen, incredible stories that happen, and say, that's out of the blue. I didn't plan for that. No logic would explain that. The famous story about Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins was chosen for a movie called The Girl from Petrovka 20 years ago, I think. And it was based on a novel. And he wanted to find the novel so he could read the novel and prepare for the movie. Went all over London, no bookshop had The Girl from Petrovka. Frustrated, he went and sat down in Hyde Park, sat on a bench, looked to the right of him, and there was something in an envelope. He picked up the envelope. Guess what was inside? The Girl from Petrovka. And it had notes about the characters in the movie. Now, he was very glad to have that. He then went for the first day of shooting, and the guy who wrote the book was there to advise on the movie. And Anthony Hopkins had his book. And the guy said to him, what's that book you've got there? And he showed him. He said, that's my book. Because he'd actually lost the book where he'd made all the notes. And Anthony Hopkins gave him back the book. Now, nobody can explain that as wishful thinking or whatever it might be. That's a synchronicity. So all I'm saying is that the phrases I got from the people, 200 pages of data from the people I interviewed, from which I took out of that using grounded theory analysis, here are the 9 concepts that really sum up what's being said. Can I say to you that is definitively black and white true? No, I can't. But what I can say to you is that synchronicity stories continue, and they seem to blow in the face logic in terms of the only way of deciding. Now, I am very strongly against anybody who says, listen to your heart. Even though I love the song, listen to your heart. Why? Because God gave us a heart and a brain, and we need both. And sometimes we don't need to listen to our heart, we need to listen to our head. But if you don't know the Heart Math, go look at Heart Math website. They've got free white papers. They will show to you how the heart has an impact. And they say that the heart has a connection to the energetic field, and quantum entanglement says we are 99.9% empty space and energy. Now, if that is true about who we are, what a wonderful world we're living in. And what I'm trying to help people to think about is, in your teams, in your organization, in your personal life, when you're stuck with a problem. So I call my approach the Synchronicity Solutions Academy. Synchronicity gives you some insight to begin to think about how to answer problems and issues that you currently have. Maria, you still have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking, since I told you before, I research free play in adults, and I see synchronicities happening absolutely all the time, but more in an individual sphere. But I'm very curious because I have that question also to work with organizations and teams. Do you have any examples of synchronicity happening to a team of people, to a group of people, to a collective, not individual? You know what I mean? Because I see a big difference.
I've spent 40 years working with teams. That's my key focus, which is why my next book is Team Synchronicity.
Yeah.
What I found, and I spend a lot of time helping teams be comfortable with each other. I'm certified in team psychological safety. So I don't have specific examples. I mean, I've got them, but what I will say is that when I get a team to meditate together, they then are much closer in terms of being able to attract to them what the team is about in terms of their mission, their focus. I worked with a team in Bhutan, and it was the Denmark Aid Authority. The government of Denmark had a program in Bhutan, and they were all leaving because their work had finished. And I helped them to begin to think about what was the next stage for them in terms of their job, because the team was being disbanded. And what I did with them was sent them, and we actually camped in the mountains of Bhutan. It was a wonderful session. It was beautiful sunshine, and a team of 8 people. And I got them to keep in mind as a team what each individual wanted to do next with their career, wanting the answer to that, and then sent them on a 1-hour walk in the mountains in Bhutan. And all of them came back with answers in terms of basically saying to them, stay in the present moment as you are walking silently and observe what you see in nature, and see what answers come back to you. The other thing that I know as well, Maria, to answer your question, is that I said to myself, and I've forgotten the year for this, but I remember saying to myself, synchronicities happen when I'm working in teams in nature. So let me try and get more team sessions in nature and see what happens. That was Monday. Tuesday, I got an email from a bank in South Africa, said, Philip, you don't know us, we've never worked with you before, but we found you on the internet. We'd like you to come and do a session for our team on team leadership and fly fishing. And we're going to do it in a rural setting outside Johannesburg in a hotel. And we're going to send our team on fly fishing. We've got a fly fishing expert. And we'd like you to work with the team about how they can access answers using their intuition and synchronicity. So, Maria, it's, again, I'm not somebody who says this is definite, black and white, do this, do this, do this. I think we are in a period in the world which is amazing, where we are beginning to let go of the Newtonian cause and effect, logical, linear thinking. Nothing wrong with that, but we are now opening ourselves to the emerging reality of intuition and synchronicity. You never used to see intuition as a leadership competence 20 years ago. You look at any leadership competence these days, you'll find intuition there. So my 9 keys is my humble attempt to try and say, look, here's what a group of people I interviewed and I've done analysis. Here's the 9 keys. And it will continue to emerge. Does that make sense, Maria? Shall I show you?
A lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let me. Any other questions? And I'll finish off with the last 3 or 4 final slides. Okay, let me just now finish off here. So I'm now, my company is called Philip Merry Consulting Group, but I've now kind of renamed Synchronicity Solutions Academy. I'm not a spiritual guru who likes all this woo-woo stuff. Synchronicity happens because the stories continue, and the stories can potentially give you solutions. So I like synchronicity to be very practical. Practical example, you've all heard of Martin Seligman. Back in 2008 or whenever it was, my wife and I decided to organize Singapore's first happiness conference. And I said to a friend of mine, and she said, well, you need Martin Seligman. As you know, Martin Seligman founded positive psychology, but how the hell do I find Martin Seligman? Following day, I'm having a meeting with an Australian client and explained my plans. I said, but I don't know how to find Martin Seligman. He reached into his diary, pulled out his diary and said, here's the personal email contact for Martin Seligman. He was working for us last month. What happened then? We organized a session with Martin Seligman, first happiness conference in Singapore. And Martin Seligman was there. Clearly wouldn't have happened without synchronicity. I do a lot of work with the United Nations. Worked many places with the United Nations. Here's me and a certain gentleman. I said at university, when I think about my career, I'd like to do something with the United Nations. I was at a conference in the UK. Somebody from the UN was there. They said, will you come and do a session in Geneva, which I did, and I've done it all over the world. So we're in the middle of a paradigm shift away from Newtonian thinking to quantum thinking. And I've highlighted here many things, but 4, matter is separate, matter is entangled. So if you don't know quantum entanglement, just go look at search quantum entanglement. I think it gives us an answer. Some people disagree with me, but I think it's an easy answer. Humans are separate from each other, but actually this is what reality looks like. 99% vibrating waves of energy, and we are entangled with each other. So if we are entangled with each other, then it's no wonder that you think about your sister one day and you're concerned about her. You're in London and she's in New York. That night she calls you and said, yeah, I was feeling not too good today. I had an operation for appendicitis, which suddenly came. How do you know? And I think quantum entanglement begins to give us answers as to how and why it happens. But remember, in the workplace, people say, please don't tell my boss. So the leader's role, and if you want a much better book than mine, go for Joe Jaworski, whose book called Synchronicity is absolutely fantastic. And he said something which guides me still. The leader's role is to set the stage on which miracles, synchronistic in nature, can and do happen. So imagine those of you, Elena, who are working with leaders, and when you say to people, that's what we're about, that's what we're supposed to know. At first, you don't notice synchronicity. But when your eyes open, Elena, back to your original question, when your eyes open, you begin to see them then all around you in plain view. So my final thought is, behind every synchronicity is what I call a miracle waiting to happen. We got 5 minutes left. There may be other questions. Alex, you got to keep us on time here. I like to keep time, but we've got 5 minutes left. Bruce, I like your comment. Yes, Newton was not only a materialist, he was the most incredible alchemist. And people don't know that. But obviously his physical laws are kind of more on the materialist side. But behind that, he was not. He was more of an alchemist. Thank you for that, Bruce, and reminder of that. Where's Bruce? There's Bruce. Okay. Greg.
Okay, just a quick question. Have you considered encouraging people in the direction of literature and visual art and the arts in general as a kind of way of perhaps helping them over this skepticism about synchronicity?
I absolutely do that, Greg. When I work with teams, I'll get them to say to me, what is it you're focused on as a team? What does it feel like in this team? Where are the good things? Where are the bad things? So I'll get the words. And then I'll say to them, close your eyes and answer this question. Working in this team feels like, and then see what images come to you. And then I get to them to draw it down, both individually first, and then if it's a team of 5 or 6, I get them all to create a collage about what it's like in this team, and particularly then later on a vision of where they want to go in the future. And you're absolutely right, Greg, that somehow when we let people or ask people to give us a visual image of what their life feels like or what their team feels like, they're much more likely to access synchronistic views of the future. Spot on, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip. I put a few links in the chat to find the recording.
I saw that, Alex. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we have it on YouTube in the Taos Institute Commons online community. You can find links and many other resources on the Taos Institute website. And Philip, what is the best way to find your book?
Yes, philipmerry.com.
Okay.
Or search the 9 Keys of Synchronicity. It's on Amazon. But I've loved it that there's a small group. Thank you so much, those of you who are here. If you have questions, please just write to me. I'm very happy to continue to talk with you about anything that you want to say.
Thank
And
you
it's
so much.
it's 1 hour, Alex. Should we just call it a day?
Yes, I think we're ready to close up. So
Thank you,
so
everybody
much,
from
Thank
Singapore.
You, Philip. We will
Thank you,
see you around.
Good to see you, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.